From hidden scandals to shocking cover-ups, these political moments shook America and changed history forever. Watched carefully, you won't believe how deep these stories go.
A car plunges off a secluded wooden bridge on a moonlit summer night. A senator escapes, but the passenger, a 28-year-old political aide, drowns in silence. In the hours that followed, Senator Ted Kennedy's reputation and presidential ambitions were sacrificed in a scandal too murky to make sense. Until now. It was the night of July 18, 1969, on the small, sleepy island of Chappaquiddick, just off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. A party was underway in a remote cottage, a reunion of sorts for 6 young women who had worked on the late Senator Robert F. Kennedy's presidential campaign. Among the guests, 37-year-old Senator Edward Ted Kennedy, the younger brother of both John F. and Robert Kennedy. As the night wore on and drinks flowed, Ted Kennedy offered one of the women, 28-year-old Mary Jo Chappaquiddick, a ride back to her hotel. According to Kennedy, she was feeling tired and wanted to leave early. But instead of taking the direct, well-lit route toward the ferry, Kennedy turned down a narrow dirt road known as Dyke Road, leading to a wooden bridge, Dyke Bridge, that had no guardrails and was known locally for being dangerous at night. At approximately 11:15 p.m., the car, a dark Oldsmobile driven by Kennedy, plunged off the side of the bridge into the murky waters below. Kennedy managed to escape. Mary Jo did not. Here is where the mystery deepens. Kennedy claimed he dove repeatedly in an attempt to rescue Mary Jo, but eventually gave up and walked back to the cottage, passing several houses along the way without seeking help. Once back, he spoke to 2 close friends, Joe Gargan and Paul Markham, both lawyers, and they allegedly returned to the bridge to try and save her, but failed. Strangely, Kennedy never called the police that night. In fact, he didn't report the incident until the next morning, more than 10 hours later. By then, the car had already been discovered by local fishermen, with Mary Jo's body still trapped inside. The medical examiner concluded that Mary Jo had died of asphyxiation, not drowning, suggesting she may have been alive in a small air pocket for hours after the crash. This chilling detail sparked immediate outrage. Could she have been saved if authorities had been notified sooner? Kennedy's explanation raised more questions than answers. He said he was in shock. He said he panicked. But skeptics and the press weren't buying it. Why didn't he seek help immediately? Why did he walk past multiple homes? Why wait 10 hours? Whispers of a cover-up began to spread. Kennedy's political allies moved quickly, leveraging influence to minimize the fallout. A quick court hearing was held, and Kennedy pled guilty to leaving the scene of an accident. His sentence? A 2-month suspended jail term, no actual jail time. The public backlash was intense, but Kennedy tried to reclaim the narrative. He delivered a nationally televised speech admitting guilt and asking the people of Massachusetts whether he should continue serving. A surprising number forgave him. He remained in office until his death in 2009. But even decades later, the questions never stopped. Why did he drive Mary Jo in the first place? Were they having an affair? Did political operatives clean up the scene before police arrived? Did Kennedy use his name and power to escape justice? What is certain is this: Mary Jo Chappaquiddick, a bright, idealistic young woman, died under suspicious circumstances. And the man behind the wheel walked free, shielded, some say, by the unbreakable armor of the Kennedy name. The Chappaquiddick incident remains one of America's most controversial unsolved political scandals, not because we don't know what happened that night, but because we may never know why.
In the summer of 2023,
a mysterious bag of white powder was discovered in one of the most secure buildings in the world, the White House. It wasn't a TV drama. It was real. Surveillance, lockdowns, elite investigations, and still no clear answers. Who left it? Why? And how did it get past the tightest security on the planet? What you're about to hear isn't conspiracy. It's a timeline that leaves more questions than answers. Stay with us until the very end. On July 2, 2023, a suspicious white powder was discovered in a small plastic bag inside the West Wing of the White House, not in some obscure hallway, but in a storage cubby near the West Executive entrance, a location frequently used by staff and guests on official business. Within minutes, the area was locked down. The Secret Service called in the hazmat team, and nearby zones were evacuated. Preliminary field tests confirmed it. The substance was white powder. When the story broke publicly on July 4th, ironically, on Independence Day, the media and public erupted. How did illegal drugs end up inside the White House, the epicenter of American power, surrounded by layers of armed security, cameras, and checkpoints? Theories spread like wildfire. Some claimed it had to be left by a visitor. Others suggested it pointed to someone inside the administration. The fact that the White House did not immediately release surveillance footage or a suspect's name only deepened the speculation. The U.S. Secret Service took control of the investigation. Dozens of individuals who had access to the area were questioned. Fingerprints and DNA were tested on the bag. Surveillance footage from the surrounding zones was reviewed. Even visitor logs were audited. And yet, within just 11 days, on July 13th, the Secret Service closed the case, with no suspects identified, no arrests, and no definitive explanation. The stated reason? Quote, lack of physical evidence, unquote. This only added fuel to the fire. Why did the investigation wrap up so quickly? Why were security cameras in one of the most surveilled buildings in the world not conclusive? Critics pointed out that the White House has layers of access control. Everyone coming in must go through rigorous screening. Phones are logged. Visitors are watched. Was someone being protected? The fact that the discovery came just days after Hunter Biden, the president's son, had been seen at the White House and who has a public history of drug use became a point of media and public focus. But the White House firmly denied any connection. Political opponents seized the moment. Conservative voices accused the administration of a cover-up. Congressional Republicans demanded more transparency. Some even pushed for formal hearings. The phrase "White Powdergate" began trending across social media. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced intense questioning. She repeatedly emphasized that the area where the white powder was found was used by visitors and guests, not by staff or the first family. But the public wasn't satisfied. Former law enforcement and intelligence officers voiced deep concern. If white powder could be smuggled in undetected, what else could? Weapons, deadly substances. The credibility of White House security and the Secret Service was suddenly under national scrutiny. Some quietly admitted that while the West Wing had cameras, there were blind spots, especially in the storage cubby area. Others suggested the security protocol may have been deliberately circumvented. To this day, no one knows who brought the white powder into the White House. Was it a careless visitor? A political staffer? Someone with more power than we'll ever know? Or was it a bizarre fluke that slipped through the system? The unanswered questions remain, and so does the unease. No matter how it happened, the 2023 White House white powder incident marked a disturbing first in American history. It shattered the illusion that some places are impenetrable. It reminded the world that even the highest levels of power are not immune to chaos, secrecy, and scandal. And it left behind a troubling mystery. How much do we really know about what goes on behind closed doors, even at the very top?
In the summer of 1972, a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters seemed like a simple burglary, but what followed unraveled a chain of lies, secret recordings, and hidden orders, reaching all the way to the President of the United States. Was it a political hit job or something far more sinister? Discover the secrets that forced the most powerful man in America to resign. On the night of June 17, 1972, 5 men were caught inside the Watergate office complex in Washington, D.C., attempting to wiretap phones and steal documents from the Democratic National Committee headquarters. At first, it seemed like just another burglary in the crime-ridden capital. The suspects were dressed in suits, carried thousands in cash, and had expensive equipment, but no one could explain why. What began as a routine police report quickly evolved into something darker. Investigative journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post dug deeper. They discovered that one of the burglars had ties to the CIA, and that another was on the payroll of the Committee to Re-elect the President, or CRP, Richard Nixon's campaign team. As pressure mounted, more threads began to unravel. The White House denied any involvement, yet leaks from inside suggested otherwise. Secret slush funds, hidden campaign tactics, political espionage. It was no longer a case of burglary, it was a full-blown conspiracy. Then came the tapes. It was revealed that President Nixon had been secretly recording conversations in the Oval Office. When subpoenaed by investigators, the tapes confirmed what many feared. Nixon had discussed ways to obstruct the FBI investigation just days after the break-in. In one recording, later called the smoking gun, Nixon was heard suggesting to use the CIA to block the FBI. Public trust crumbled. High-ranking officials resigned. Some were indicted. The nation watched live as former Attorney General John Mitchell, Nixon's aides H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman, and even White House counsel John Dean testified about the cover-up. In August 1974, faced with almost certain impeachment, Richard Nixon resigned, the first U.S. president ever to do so. His successor, Gerald Ford, controversially pardoned him a month later, sparking outrage and suspicion that the true depth of the scandal had been buried. But behind the scenes, there were whispers of more. FBI Deputy Director Mark Felt, later revealed to be the informant Deep Throat, had guided the journalists to the truth. Some claimed Nixon's paranoia stemmed not just from the election, but from older secrets tied to Vietnam, the CIA, and covert operations unknown to the public. Was Watergate truly just about political sabotage, or was it the visible tip of a far deeper, more sinister power structure unraveling from within? To this day, some documents remain classified. Some players have died, their roles never fully understood. And though Watergate became synonymous with presidential scandal, many still wonder, if the president could fall like this, what else remains hidden behind closed doors?